Could back to school shopping unbalance your budget until Christmas? It will for many families. We'll look at 6 tools you can use to reduce back-to-school spending on the Dollar Stretcher interview. Back-to-school shopping is the second biggest shopping spree of the year. According to a National Retail Federation survey, parents last year spent over $26 billion on back-to-school items. If you're an average back-to-school shopper, you'll spend nearly $900 on clothing, school supplies, electronics, and computer-related goods. Hi, I'm Gary Foreman, editor of thedollarstretcher.com. With me today is Daniel D. Morris. Dan is a partner in the San Jose CPA firm of Morris & DeAngelo. He's also founder of VeraSage Institute, a think tank dedicated to value pricing, customer economics, and human capital development. His firm's website, cpadudes.com, describes him as Chief Dragon Slayer. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much.
And so help us slay the back-to-school dragon. I know press release indicated that there were six tools that people can use. The first being taking an inventory before you go shopping. Tell us why you think that's helpful.
Well, first of all, school supplies frequently don't change from year to year, and what happens is we like new stuff and we forget that we have the old stuff, and then we find that drawer that's got all the pens and the paper and the pencil and the notebooks and the peaches, or what our era were peaches, and the calculator probably doesn't need to be replaced if we can find the old one. So the first thing we should do, and we have to do this at my house too because I've got 2 high schoolers, what do we have before we go out and buy a whole bunch of new stuff? So let's not replace things we already own, because that's both wasteful, but it's inefficient.
Now, I know a lot of schools come out with lists for the students, and parents feel like they have to have everything on that list before the first day of school, and you feel like that's not necessarily true.
The school districts do their best to say, hey, these are what most students will need for most kinds of classes, but every student's different, and every teacher is going to modify what they really want and need. Some schools will be able to provide more. Some schools will allow for sharing of products and services. Maybe if you have siblings, we need 1 of something in the family, not 3 or 4 of something in the family. So frequently that back to school night, there will be some modifications and adjustments to the core syllabus and what is really needed. The other thing that happens is there seems to be a mad rush to get all the supplies, and some of the supplies are out in the first week or 2 anyway, and it puts a lot of stress on families as they run around to try to find all the available supplies. So the basic core supplies, we're going to need to have those, but we need to have those all the time anyway. The specialty things, especially when it comes to electronics, calculators and computers and laptops and notebooks and iPads and all the things that we need to have for school today, the teachers will be able to give us better advice on what they're really going to use on a day-to-day and a regular basis.
Now, I know a lot of families are really stressed this time of year because they just frankly don't have the $500, $700, or $800 that they might want to spend for their kids. What can those families do?
There's a number of things that we can do. First of all, we can have a conversation with our children that it's a good time to have a financial literacy lesson, that life's expensive and we won't always get everything that we want. There are things that we need to have, and we have to have the needs. If we need to have it, we need to have it. Now, if we're really strapped on a budget, there may be groups or business associations that will be able to provide us low discount or even possibly free supplies. We can converse with our children and say, look, we'll get what our needs are, and then if we have any money left over in our budget, we can get 1 or 2 of those wants, or we can wait a little bit till October or November. We can stretch the new school buying dollar out a little bit further. What we don't want people to do is create a Christmas-style debt situation where they end up paying multiples of what the costs are for stuff that they might not really need.
Now, one thing you mentioned about having a conversation, and I always thought that different events create opportunities for families to talk about personal finance.
Yeah, I mean, financial literacy or personal finance and family finances are always a difficult and a sticky subject. Some families are very open and candid, and others are parents keep it behind the veil. what we've learned is that when we engage our children in the conversations early at age appropriate details, it helps them allocate. In my family, for example, I've got a teenager who's a driver and one who's about to be a driver. They earn an allowance, they work, they perform. I actually see that they get a check on a regular basis. The mom decides whether or not they've earned it completely this week, but it allows them to plan and stretch their money, and so that when we go to school shopping, if they want something that's outside my budget for it, well, they have their own spending money and they can budget accordingly. But once it's spent, they don't have to. They don't have any money in reserve, and then they don't get to go out and have the pizza after the football game or whatever it is. Those are just choices. So better that we learn the choices when they're 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18, rather than when they go to college and all of a sudden find themselves completely out of control because they've had every satiated want they've ever wanted in their lives handed to them.
I know along those lines, I've always been a big believer that parents would be wise to, in an age-appropriate manner, give kids an allowance and make them responsible. For instance, if they're 15, let them be responsible for what clothes they buy. Give them their budget and then let them go from there.
Yeah, we probably, I think that's a great methodology. It's difficult sometimes to stand by our children, famously figure out how to needle and get us at the weakest moments that we have. And it always seems to be, at least in my household, it's only $5 or $7 or $12, and it turns out to be, a $45 Target run. But yeah, we try to get them to be responsible for their choices, because especially with teenagers today, the competition in how they look and how they dress is more rampant today than it was in our generation. The children want to be stylish, they want to be cool and neat, but yet those require unlimited budgets, and we don't have unlimited budgets. So we all have to rein in a little bit. And when you tell somebody it's back to school shopping, and the average family spends $800 or $900, that means there are families that are spending $1,500 or $2,000, and some that might be spending $100. And there's a wide variation. And you tell someone they're going to spend $800, they'll have no idea that that's how much money they're going to spend on clothing and basic supplies.
And one thing that strikes me is there's so many more tools available now to try to find bargains.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've got, first of all, you've got not only your newspaper style ads, you've got the internet, you've got the ability to compare pricing, you've got money back guarantees, you've got virtual coupons, you've got all of the methodologies through social capital or social media and other avenues to acquire the supplies at discounted prices or better prices, and in that way we can minimize the amount of money that we spend and look for bargains. And there's a little vintage going on right now, at least out on the West Coast. It's kind of cool for those high school kids to wear vintage clothing, and we can find vintage and used, really a nice quality, good quality clothing at used prices that might be at 10 or 20 or 30% of the original price.
Yeah, very much so. And then I know part of your practice is consumer economics and value pricing. Tell us a little bit about your practice, Dan.
Well, our practice is located in the Silicon Valley, so we have a high technology based entrepreneurial kind of practice, but we still deal with, value is subjective, right? So some people will have a desire to spend a tremendous amount of money on something that other people would never spend money on, and some people want always the cheapest price. So what we look for in helping people understand value and pricing is the same rational person might buy a Coca-Cola for 25 cents in one part of the day, but spend $5 at the Giant Stadium on another part. And why does that matter, and what impacts us? What are the emotional drivers that help consumers spend money when they really didn't plan on it? And what can businesses do to understand that consumers aren't always the same? So our practice specializes on startup companies and entrepreneurs who are trying to navigate the complex world that technology and social media and telephony the Web 2.0 kind of stuff that's allowing us to navigate all these neat things in our lives.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, we appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today, and we look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Gary, thank you very much. Thank you.